Health and Neurology in Ozark, Missouri. This is a neurology and functional medicine practice, and I'm so glad to have everyone on board this morning. Here's my lovely wife, Valerie,
Hello.
And one of our two King Charles Cavaliers. This is Bodie. And even just having Bodie on the video with us this morning brings me right to what I want to share with you today, and that is a little message about stress. We are very interested in stress, or what actually I like to call stress resilience. You know, life is full of so many stressors. A lot of folks are worried about things from the recent elections to COVID-19 to, hey, how am I going to make that mortgage payment or that rental payment, to maybe you're going through a little struggle in your personal relationships. All of those things add up, right? So we talk about stress. Stress resilience, I consider one of the basic lifestyle factors that leads to great health for your brain and your body. And it's really also important to know that stress comes in many forms, meaning that, of course, there are situational stresses, some of which I've just mentioned, but there are physical stresses, for example, perhaps not getting a good night of sleep, right? Little Bodie decided he wanted to be active at about 3 o'clock in the morning this morning. And so he woke us all up. He wanted to go outside. Those disruptions from sleep are really huge disruptions to healthy brain and body function, and so they lead to physical stresses. Another physical stress might be, I don't get up and move my body enough. We are really designed to move, and so being sedentary, sitting a lot, can be in and of itself a huge physical stress. But most of us do think about emotional stress, and of course that's important too. In the body, stress leads to changes in hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, but also in more subtle things like the immune system. How many of us know, for example, if we're super stressed out, we're more likely to get sick? We see a lot, for example, of a condition called shingles, and shingles is from the chickenpox virus, but we see shingles in people who are dealing with a lot of life stress or health stresses, or they're older adults, and over time their immune system has become so weak that the shingles becomes a problem. That was a huge problem for my father-in-law, Valerie's dad, and it really plagued him for several years, actually. We're not here really to talk about shingles. Again, we're here to talk about stress and how we have to recognize that having what I call a stress resilience practice, building that muscle, figuratively speaking, is just as important as getting in your anti-inflammatory diet or having some movement in your life every day, or even connecting with others like Valerie and Bodie every day. We have to give hugs to our spouses and our dogs. Yes, I do hug my dog. So Bodie's looking kind of suspicious about that. Well, moving right along, I've asked Valerie to come on. She is the health coach at Charlotte Health and Neurology. She has many, many years of experience in working in particular with older adults and understanding the issues that they may go through. And more recently, she has adopted a technology into her toolbox that's been around for several years. I've actually been using it for about 7 or 8 years in my practice. And it's from a company called HeartMath. And she's going to talk a little bit about HeartMath, what tools are available through HeartMath, what HeartMath is actually based on, which is something called heart rate variability. So what is heart rate variability and why should you care? And how can you use this really powerful information to build up your stress resistance muscle? So what do you say, Val?
Well, I think that I always think of a little analogy of your cell phone. If you have a lot of apps going in the background, a lot of websites open and you haven't closed them, then your battery drains.
Yeah.
So if you close everything up and charge your battery up, then it's nice to have a full cell phone. So if you are having depleting emotions like worry, you're ruminating on things. You just keep going things over in your mind about conversations that happen, or just that general feeling of anxiety. You're not really sure why. That's depleting your emotional battery. That's depleting that resilience. So by actually on purpose bringing in these emotions that are replenishing, like I like to pick up the dog every day, and just how many times can this dog be so cute, or
He's pretty cute.
He's pretty cute. Or that I'm very grateful for my husband. I'm, grateful for our practice. I'm grateful that my mother is still healthy. I love my children. My son just got married. So just concentrating on those positive emotions just makes your battery charge up.
Makes your brain actually grow. So there's some really incredible science. Have you seen this, Val?
Yes.
Yep. So we know, for example, and a classic illustration would be our soldiers who come back from active service. And by the way, today is Veterans Day, so we do want to salute our veterans. Our son, Gabe, served 5 years in the Navy. So many of you guys out there are servicemen and women, and we truly do thank you for your service. But we want to talk, we're talking about stress. So what I'm mentioning is the condition called post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, this is stress taken to the maximum. What we know in looking at the brain in people who suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder is that a region known as the hippocampus, which is a key component of another region called the limbic system, but the hippocampus is involved in short-term memory. I call it like the RAM memory on your computer. It's sort of that holding area, and if you turn your computer off, it's lost, so you always have to save to your hard drive to remember. And by the way, that happens a lot during sleep, meaning that sleep is critical for memory storage. But the hippocampus is affected in PTSD. The hippocampus is affected in conditions like Alzheimer's disease. And what happens is when the hippocampus is affected, we actually see loss of volume. We use the term atrophy, which means it shrinks. It actually gets smaller. So in people with PTSD whose hippocampal area has lots of cortisol receptors, that stress hormone, and those cortisol receptors are just saturated because they're in this constant state of fight or flight, it actually leads to loss of volume in this region of the brain, very similar to Alzheimer's disease, because when those hippocampal cortisol receptors are just saturated, the brain can't make use of another key hormone called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which means grow new brain cells, grow your brain. And so it's kind of like I always say in my practice, you can't have one foot on the accelerator, one foot on the brake at the same time. Of course, there are times where you need to brake, and of course, there are times where you need to have your foot on the accelerator. It's just doing both at the same time is counterproductive. Car won't drive, your brain won't work. So how do we get the brain out of that fight or flight mode? How do we get the body out of that fight or flight mode and therefore optimize the immune system, optimize your mitochondria, optimize your digestion? Because how many of us know when we're super stressed out, what happens to your digestion? This is a tool that's going to get you there.
So the best thing that you can do is take in some breath and actually expand your rib cage and open your heart space and just bring in some breath and then concentrate on those positive emotions. And that's going to trigger the vagus nerve. You're going to have some DHEA, all these wonderful juices from the vagus nerve to soothe everything in your body and calm. So just by breathing and the practice every day of breathing in and focusing on these regenerative emotions, build that battery in the cell phone, build that stress resilience. So if you had an emergency and you had to deal with something really stressful, if your battery's low, that even increases the stress. But if you've got a full battery, you're able to call for help, you're able to take care of the situation. So there's research studies with police officers that are involved in, like SWAT team situations where their stress levels go through the roof. they would check their stress levels the next week, the next month. They stayed high. But with constant practice of the stress resilience with the inner balance, focusing on
Inner balance from heart math, right? Okay.
Focusing on these regenerative emotions, the situation can cause the stress levels to go up, but just within an hour, their stress levels go back down because they have stress resilience.
They built that muscle up.
Right.
So heart rate variability is kind of at the core of this tool called Inner Balance from Heart Math. And that just refers to the beat-to-beat variation in the normal rhythm of your heart. So we're not talking about people who have irregular heart rhythms like atrial fibrillation. That's totally different. This is when you put your finger on your pulse, whether it's your wrist or in your neck. And if you do it on your neck, be very gentle, and you can feel that lumped up, lumped up, lumped up. So the heart seems very regular, but if we had a very fine caliper, a very fine tool to actually measure the time between heartbeats, we'd find that even though it seems regular when you feel your pulse, in fact, there's very subtle differences from beat to beat to beat on the order of fractions of a second, right? But it turns out that the more at rest you are, the more relaxed you are at a very deep physiological level, not just I think I'm kind of chill, but in fact my whole body is really in, fight or flight mode, the more you're actually in this very deep state of relaxation, the more heart rate variability you will have. And we know that correlates with living longer, having fewer events in your life like stroke or heart attack, or even developing conditions like dementia. So, this sounds kind of technical, and to some extent it is, and you can find very long scientific articles on all of this stuff, but ultimately we have to have a way to kind of simplify and apply it in our lives, and this is where heart math comes in.
Right, so it's a wonderful little app called Inner Balance on your smartphone. You just have a little device that plugs to your ear on Bluetooth, and I just breathe in for 5 minutes, and then it gives me a result on the end, and you can see that I practice so much that I'm 100% in coherence.
What is coherence?
So coherence is that lovely round regulation of the heart. So I've got my foot more on the brake. I'm calm. I'm meditating. I'm praying.
I'm slowing down. Not like the hard brake, right? Not like that kind of thing, but just like being in the moment, taking that deep, deep breath all the way down the diaphragm with the slow out, puts everything in the right place. This device gives you that feedback. Are you actually where you think you are? And it's not just for, it is great to do it for a minute or two here or there. But again, if I can use that analogy of exercising, the more you practice, the more you actually rewire your brain and your body so that there is coherence, that synchrony between what you think your state of being is and the state of being your body's actually in. I mean, how many people do we know are like this all the time, and you could practically tap them on the shoulder and they'd hit the ceiling. They may outwardly seem calm. They might even say, I'm fine, right? But their body knows otherwise. So how do we teach the body that knows otherwise? How do we teach the body, in fact, things are okay? How do we teach the body that we're not being chased by the saber-toothed tiger right at this moment? And that's where this tool comes in.
Well, we've been seeing younger people with very bad stress reactions on their body, and I'm not exactly sure, maybe it's all the technologies, the waves, the news, who knows, but they're just an entire generation of people that have grown up without good stress resilience.
It is a huge problem, and I always say, when you're young, even though you shouldn't, you do a lot of things you probably shouldn't do. Things you might be eating, things you might be drinking. staying up all night, having a great time. And I'm not, of course, trying to stereotype anyone, but our younger generation outwardly sort of handles that better than as we get older and I'm like, I have one glass of wine and I'm ready for sleep. But the reality is these things do chip away at us from a very young age. And if we have a young generation with low stress resilience, what happens to them 10, 20, 30 years from now, where they're starting their lives at, this early stage with not enough built-in resilience to really handle the challenges of aging. But that being said, this is a tool for everyone. This is a wonderful tool that you can use at any stage in life if you want to improve your stress muscle for your body and your brain.
And one of the exercises that I ask people to do is just to hug their significant other for 60 full seconds. So when you come home from work, you have to hug your wife for 60 seconds. You're looking at your watch sometimes, but you are hugging me for 60 seconds. That puts both of our hearts in coherence. We breathe together. You get that lovely pheromone exchange. And the rest of the evening is calm. So,
okay.
They've been calling that the Valerie hug.
Now, just to round things out, there are heart math practitioners, and Valerie is one of them, and she can actually work with you using the heart math, teaching you how to take this type of information to a whole other level in terms of maybe you have certain goals in life. Maybe you have a vision for your future, right? Valerie works on vision statements with all of our patients, with all of her clients. How do you ultimately take that vision and make it a reality? And one of the ways you can do that is actually to use heart math.
That's true. And I also identify what your strengths are. What was the last time you were successful and you were resilient? What strength did you have? I'm a very spiritual person. That's one of my strong strengths. Your strength is honesty. You like very black and white factual things, and that's your strength.
Yeah. Well, we promised to keep things relatively short for these live broadcasts, and so I'm going to say goodbye to you all till next week. But if you do have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments below this video. I will try to personally go in there and answer them. I'm sure Valerie would be happy to answer if any are directed toward her. She's more expert on the subject that's being addressed in the question.
And
Yes.
you can always just call, and I can just do a free assessment to just see if you and I get along, and I'd be happy to help you with some calming techniques.
Love to work with you. You can see our website address below has the information on how to connect directly with Valerie or with Charlton Health and Neurology. In total, and all of the services we offer. Our phone number is 417-485-4330, and we do offer telehealth. We see people from all around the world. So whenever I see comments on the Facebook page about, I wish you were closer, well, I wish we were closer to you too. Love you all, but do know that we're very happy to connect with you through telehealth technology. So please do reach out. We're here to help.
Been visiting with a lady in Ireland. Very fun place.
Yeah. All right, guys, have a great time. I'm going to give Valerie a hug. Oh. Take care. Bye-bye.